among the great values of the discussion we've just heard is the way, especially in the last 10 minutes, it was exploring how the tools of digital interactivity, which of course at their heart are binary, yes or no, 1 or 0, are revealing the complexities of human nature, of social organization, of political ideas, of everything else we do in life. With this same theme, that the world is complex, people are complex, and the complexity is being revealed all the more clearly by these digital tools we work on, we have the next presentation, which will be the last one before our lunchtime. So far in our speeches and our panels, we've been talking about two things fundamentally. One is about people working together in groups, they're connecting, they're collaborating, and second, we've been talking about the digital tools which make this kind of collaboration and connection possible. We've heard about all the richnesses, some of the occasional perils that this new paradigm for operation holds. As a reminder of the complexity of life, we're now going to consider the other side of that, of what it is like for people to work fundamentally on their own, to work fundamentally in a non-virtual way, a quite tangible and practical way. This is partly the world of Thoreau we might be re-entering, not quite the world of Pascal, who told us that all of mankind's miseries derive from the inability to sit quietly in one's rooms by oneself, because we're not going to hear about sitting quietly in the room, but we are going to hear about the non-virtual life, the largely individual life, and how we should take its findings and complement what we've been hearing in the rest of the presentations. To do this, we have an extraordinary conversation between two gifted speakers. One of them, Tom Brokaw, is known to and respected by probably hundreds of millions of people around the world, viewers for his work as a reporter and for more than 2 decades as an anchor at NBC News. I've known him myself for a long time, starting when I was a viewer in Los Angeles when I was growing up. I most recently saw him early last year when two of us were having lunch with another mutual friend. This friend was trying to decide whether or not he should get into politics. This friend was Jim Webb, who was deciding then whether or not he should run for the Senate in Virginia, and of course he did, and his campaign was greatly affected by an internet tool, YouTube, through Macaca. Among Tom Brokaw's accomplishments is that of being an outdoorsman, too. And in that connection, he will speak with one of his friends, a great outdoorsman and businessman, Yvon Chouinard. He is the founder of Patagonia, which arose from his expertise in the non-virtual world of rock climbing equipment. He's put his commitment to the real world into action as leader of the worldwide movement to devote 1% for the planet. So to discuss living the non-virtual life, please join me in welcoming Tom Brokaw and Yvon Chouinard.
Pleased to be here. I was so relieved this morning when I was partaking of the great spread out here, the Google breakfast. I was trying to decide whether to get an extra strip of bacon, and then I remembered last night's news about the market cap at Google, and I decided, what the hell, I'm going to go for the extra strip of bacon. I've been trying to think of a frame of reference to introduce to this crowd my friend Yvon Chouinard, and this is what I've settled on. I want you to all to think of yourselves as members of a graduate course in the digital revolution or in computer sciences at Stanford. You're in the middle of a heated discussion when through the door bursts a blacksmith in a leather apron, sweaty and grimy, humping on the bellows. The forge is white hot. He's got a piece of molten steel in his tongs, and he says to all of you, just a damn minute. My friend Yvon began life as a climber. That led him to becoming a blacksmith so that he could improve the tools of rock climbing first and then ice climbing. He is, I say without fear of reputation, one of the most successful people that I know in every sense of the word, personally and professionally. He's had a life of contentment pursuing his passions. He's an accomplished not only rock and ice climber, but kayaker, and fly fisherman, and surfer. In his personal life, he's married to Melinda, who's here today as well, who's his business partner, and they have built one of the most enviable businesses in the world, frankly, in Patagonia. We've known each other for more than 30 years now, and he's been a hugely important influence in my life. Even when he's not around, I feel his tug on my shirt sleeve saying, let's get the hell out of here and go do something. And we have done that. We've done it on the Trans-Tibetan Plateau in the Russian Far East, north of the Arctic Circle, in Patagonia and most of the mountaintops of the American West. Just 10 days ago, we were together in British Columbia fishing, and one of his friends brought over a DVD that he wanted to show me about what was happening to the headwaters in BC, and I put it in my laptop, and I had problems syncing it up. And Yvon was standing there watching, and he walked away from me saying, I'm the problem, I know. If I get too close to these things, they don't work. So it's there that I want to begin. Have you ever put your fingers on a keyboard?
Absolutely not, no.
Never have?
Never.
You ever owned a BlackBerry?
I don't even know what they are.
You have a cell phone?
I don't have a cell phone, but you know, I'm the most unwired person in the world, probably, but that's a personal choice. But my friend Tom McGuane says, behind every Luddite there's a woman with a computer.
It's true. Melinda is out there, and we were able to communicate back when we wanted to find out what was going on in the company and online sales, that she was able to do it. By the way, he's known to his friends as YC, or the Tiny Terror, and you'll understand that phrase as we go through the course of our discussion here today. But Patagonia, Yvon, has gone online, and it's a big part of your success now and a big part of your business plan.
Yeah, I mean, my company is completely wired, even though I'm not. I mean, starting from the very first IBM computers. I remember years ago, we had to switch from a System 32 to the next computer, and we bought it and put it in, and several months later I figured I better go see this thing, see what it looks like. And we called it Roscoe. And I went into this room, this air-conditioned room where the computer was, and I was looking at this thing. I said, Jesus, I spent $250,000 on that thing? He said, no, Roscoe's over there. You're looking at the air conditioner. But, my company is completely wired, but that's because every company is. But that doesn't make it right. I mean, it's kind of like everybody drives SUVs because they're afraid not to drive SUVs because they're afraid of getting hit by an SUV. So, I asked my assistant for a telephone number, and it takes him 3 times longer to find it on his computer than if he had a little Rolodex. So, it's not the answer for everything. And it's certainly in my own personal life, it's not the answer for me.
We'll talk about that in a moment. But in terms of the business, you're doing more online direct sales now. And I know how you feel about the consumption of energy. That saves energy because people are not getting in their automobile and driving to one of your stores, of which you have a large network around the country as well. Isn't that an advantage of technology?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, when you look at the damage that your product is doing, transportation is one of the big things. We manufacture something in Thailand where the fabric comes from Japan by ship to Thailand, and then Thailand it goes to Oakland, and then it goes by truck to Oakland to Reno. Well, shipping by ship doesn't cause much damage. It probably causes more damage shipping by truck from Oakland to Reno. Or second-day air to a mail order customer is super, super wasteful. It's like 10 times more energy use than overland. So you gotta, if you're trying to lead and examine life, you have to really ask a lot of very deep questions and keep asking those questions, because there's often unintended consequences to any of this technology.
Let me ask you about the next generation coming up. I mean, one of the strong feelings I have, and you and I part slightly on all of this, I'm not promiscuous about technology, but I see the advantages of it, and I'm excited by the uses of it. But at the same time, I say to young people when I go out and talk to them in colleges and in high school levels or in junior high level, that you can wire the world and short-circuit your soul, and by that I mean you can't solve the fundamental problems of poverty, for example, by hitting the delete button or hitting backspace to go back to a time in which you're more comfortable. Do you worry about generations coming along who don't put their boots on the ground or get their hands in the dirt or spend their nights in scary places and find their way by their own reckoning as opposed to a GPS system?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I read an article about the most successful CEOs in America. I mean, the ones that really get the job done, not the celebrity CEOs. And in every case, they have a background of working on their cars or something. I mean, these are some of the older guys when you could work on your car. Or they have a wood shop and they make things. They work with their hands, and when there's a faucet leak, they fix it. They don't call a plumber, and it gives you a certain sense of confidence that you can affect the world, that you can make change. And I think the major role of a CEO in a company is to affect change. It's not to keep the status quo. But that takes confidence to take risk and say, okay, we've been doing it this way for a long time, now let's do it this way. And I think that's missing in a lot of people because they're living in a virtual reality world where they're not getting their hands dirty. The thing that's missing in most people's lives now is time. There's probably a lot of fly fishermen in this room. I would guess that 9 out of 10 of you only fly fish with a guide because you don't have time to really learn how to do it on your own. You're trying to sidestep that process. You get the plastic surgeons and CEOs that want to climb Mount Everest, these high-powered people. They hire a guide. They spend $85,000. All the ladders are in place. There's 5,000 feet of fixed ropes. You don't have to carry a pack. All the camps are set up. There's a Sherpa in the front with 3 feet of rope, basically pulling. There's one in the back pushing, carrying extra oxygen bottles. You haven't climbed Everest. And, the purpose of climbing something like that is to affect some kind of spiritual or physical gain. But if you compromise the process, you're an asshole when you start out, you're an asshole when you get back.
I told you we'd get to the tiny terror part in a short order. What do you think about cell phones and sat phones on mountains and expeditions?
Well, it takes all the adventure away. I mean, if you get into trouble, you just make a little call and you're out of there. It's,
How about a compass? Would you go for a compass? I mean, I've been with you out there, and
yeah, I've used the compass before.
Not very often.
You have to have a map too to go along with it.
When you go into nature, when we've been together in Patagonia, or when we've been up in the Trans-Tibetan Plateau, or even in a wild river in Newfoundland, away from a town, what does it do for you emotionally? Can you describe to this audience that gets the same kind of thrill out of the new apps and technology about what going to a new place does for you, where it's quite primal?
Well, I've lived a life pretty close to nature all my life, and I'm kind of a Zen Buddhist in that I believe that we're part of nature. We're not separate from it, and I don't believe the world is flat or should be flat. I celebrate all the different indigenous cultures around the world, and it's really sad to me to see that we're losing one language a day. And I believe in diversity. I think nature loves diversity. It doesn't like homogeneous society. It doesn't like monoculture. It doesn't like monocrops. And my idea of sustainability is I have a friend a Japanese friend whose father is a widower. He lives on a northern part of Japan. He goes out onto the rocks on a daily basis and fishes, catches more fish than he can eat. He trades them for neighbors, for rice, salt, some few things. He has a garden. He lives on $200 a month. And that's as sustainable as I can think of.
But you can't extrapolate that to the world population that we have.
No, but I think I try to live my life going towards simplicity rather than trying to make it increasingly complex. That's why I don't have a cell phone. So that's why when I'm away from the office, I don't call in. By not calling in, it tells my employees that I trust them. I don't need to feel like a big shot that everything's going to fall apart if I don't call in every day. And it changes the whole way my business operates. Because I trust my employees that I feel like they can handle things, they do it.
To get back to the technology for a moment and your interest in the preservation of nature, if you take, for example, just biodiversity, one of the great champions of biodiversity in the world today is Gordon Moore, who is one of the founders of Intel. As you know, he's a great benefactor of Conservation International, an organization that I know that you're very familiar with, that Meredith, my wife, is vice chairman with. Tom Friedman's wife is also involved. Technology allows them to rapidly share information about what's going on in hotspots, to not only share information, but to store data and to get solutions going from scientists who are able to access what they've been able to do with it. That's a good use of technology.
Yeah, no, it really is. I'm just speaking from my own personal life. I think we're not going to solve a lot of the world's problems with technology. There's an unintended consequence for a lot of this.
Is there enough dialogue about that?
I mean, I think no, there isn't. But I think David Brower said that, a lot of the world's problems could be solved if we just turned around and took a forward step. Like, I like to drink wine. I'm so over California wine. It's so, you can't tell the difference between $2 Chuck and a lot of $15, $20 wines. They're all the same. There's no outstanding wines. They're all made in stainless steel vats, super filtered. There's no chance of taking a risk that you're going to get a bad bottle of wine. Compare that to the old style of making wine where it's in wooden cask and you get great wine with a 5-minute long lasting finish. We're this homogeneous, we're making a level world, but it's, look at the cancer rate in Australia is off the chart, skin cancer, because of the hole in the ozone. But you know what? It's because there's a bunch of red-haired, white-skinned Irish living in Australia. And who should be living there but people with jet black skin? And as we all become, homogeneous, and we all have the same genes, and we all have the same, I'm looking at, we're going through the 6th great extinction of animals around the world, and plants and birds. 70% of the large mammals in the world are in danger of extinction. We are a large mammal. The closer we are together, the more similar we are together, the more chances are that we're going to go with it. There could be a bird flu that's going to affect every one of us, except maybe a few isolated indigenous cultures that have stayed and kept their complexity and kept their culture.
Should there be more application of this new technology to address that?
I don't know about that.
Do you think that's a use that is under-realized?
Well,
that too much of it is about personal information, personal communication, and commerce.
yeah, it is. I mean, we're no longer citizens of the world. You know, we're consumers. If you look at the word consume in Webster's, it means to use up, destroy. And we have a situation where we have declining resources like this, and we have consumption going like this. Well, you know what? That can't go on forever. And whenever I get confronted with a question like you asked there, Tom, I say, okay, what's the simple way? What's a simple solution to this? We gotta work towards. I mean, in my own company, I've always felt that a product is perfected not when you can't add anything more to it, but when you can't take anything away. So, you know, for wine, my new mantra is to eat locally, drink globally. I want to drink some really interesting wines made in the old way and superb wines. You know, I mean, think about quality. The best restaurants in the world are these, you know, 3-star Michelin restaurants in Europe and stuff. Imagine if you want to create the best restaurant in the world and you spend years in getting that first Michelin star, and then you work your butt off and you get your 2nd star, and then after many, many years you get your 3rd star and you're one of the 20 best restaurants in the world. And then you say, okay, we've done it, let's put in 500 tables or 50 tables. There are no 3-star restaurants with 50 tables. If you really want excellence, it has to be small.
We've lost proportion.
Oh, absolutely. Our values are bigger is better instead of small is beautiful.
Let me be a shameless author for a moment. I have a book coming out called Boom, Voices from the 60s and Lessons for Today. And Yvon and his great friend Doug Tompkins are part of it. Doug Tompkins, as many as you know, probably, I assume many of you know, founded North Face and Esprit, and as a deep ecologist, he's bought great tracts of land in South America. Yvon is involved with Melinda as well in that. And we were there a couple of years ago, and there was a Wharton School of graduate students in business who were on an outward bound-like experience, and they came up to hear from Yvon and Doug Tompkins, two wildly successful businessmen. And the lesson that Yvon and Doug wanted to impart to them was that there are many more values than just the bottom line. And I want to just share, if I can, as I do in the book, some of the things that you talked about. One of the things that you said to them, every time in your company you were told you were doing the wrong thing, it turned out to be the right thing. What was an example of that was fundamental to your company that had nothing to do with technology?
Well, I think at one time we were, we make this capilene underwear, the synthetic underwear, and we were competing with a lot of other companies that were making underwear, and, you know, our marketing people wanted to put it in big boxes and a lot of stuff that ends up in the trash to sell that underwear, because our competitors, there's one, Hot Chili's, that was putting it in a can, looked like a tomato soup can or something. And I said, get rid of that packaging. And they said, no, man, be prepared to take a 30% cut in revenue if you get rid of that packaging. I said, no, get rid of it. It forced us to sew our underwear better so that it didn't look like underwear. It looks like in fact, Chris McDivitt the other day was accepting an award in Washington, D.C., and she's wearing this black capilene underwear, and everybody thought it was a silk shirt. So it forced our dealers to put it out instead of in a box. Our underwear sales went up 40%.
Just with a rubber band?
Yeah, we just put a rubber band around it.
And this is part of the theme of this conference, obviously, is collaboration. We're going to acknowledge our host here and touch on that a little bit. There's a reverse collaboration that is going on as a result of your business practices and the book that you wrote about your business called Let My People Go Surfing, in that you've had unlikely visitors, in my judgment, from Walmart. They've come to Patagonia to learn. What have they come to learn?
You know, there is a revolution going on in America with business. I mean, and the environment. There's a lot of very concerned people out there owning businesses that really want to do the right thing. They need to know that it's going to turn out to be profitable. And so they're calling us because we've been there. We've been doing this for a long time. And so they're calling. They want to come visit and to see whether we're real or is it green marketing. And, you know, Walmart sent 7 of their top executives to come visit us, and they want us. They want to do something. And my question to them is, oh, how far do you want to take it? You know, do you want to just green your facilities? You know, have a LEED building, or do you want to influence your suppliers? You want to take it all the way to your suppliers? Do you want to go to Coke and Pepsi and say, you know, hey, we're not going to carry your product anymore until you get rid of high fructose corn syrup? Because, you know, that's causing diabetes in America and obesity, and you want to do that? Because you could do it. If you did that to Coke and Pepsi, they would have to change. And, you know, you could change the world if you want. How far do you want to go? And so that's what I tell everybody that, so that's comes to, you know, lead and examine life. Because I think most of the damage caused to the environment is caused unintentionally by not questioning what you're doing. And once you educate yourself, then act. You know, I mean, all my friends have seen, you know, Inconvenient Truth. They've seen Tom's program on global warming. I don't know any of them that have changed their light bulbs. What was it? Entertainment?
Well, it's a big issue. We were talking with Vice President Gore about that out here beforehand, and my own guess is that it's going to be the younger people. I mean, by that, really younger people who are coming up. We're going to put the pressures upward on their parents. Tell this group about 1% to save the planet. 1% of your sales at Patagonia go for environmental causes, but not just any environmental causes.
Well, you know, I'm a manufacturer, and there's no such thing as making anything without sustainable, anything that's sustainable. I mean, we're polluters. You can't manufacture any product without ending up with more waste than you end up with. And so we try to minimize the damage that we do in making the product. We try not to make products that are inherently damaging in themselves. But in the end, we take 1% of our sales and we give it away to environmental causes, particularly activists, environmental activists, because I feel that most of the gains we're making as a society, and just look in the paper any day, you'll see that government is not doing anything, corporations are not doing anything. The big gains that we're making are done through civil democracy. You know, if you look at civil rights, women's suffrage, creating national parks, it was all done through civil democracy. You know, it wasn't Johnson that enacted civil rights legislation. It was forced by Rosa Parks, you know, a black woman who was just tired and didn't want to get off the bus. That's what's happening in America, and I don't have the courage to be on those front lines. I don't have the courage to stand in front of those bulldozers, but I dig into my pocket and I support those people that do. And we started an organization called 1% for the Planet that now has 750 companies that each gives 1% of their sales to environmental causes. And they make out the checks themselves to the organizations that they want. And we're signing up over one company a day now.
Are you concerned about the... And for those of you who have companies in this audience, we have application forms out here during the luncheon break. To talk about the environment for a moment. Are you concerned that there are too many competing environmental organizations, especially on a large scale at the top? They're all chasing the same buck and they're not collaborating enough?
Yeah, you know, the pie is getting smaller, and in fact, people, as far as philanthropy goes, very, very little of it goes to environmental causes. Almost all of it goes to churches, and it's drying up. It's people are getting greedier, I think. You know, I just saw an article in the LA Times a few months ago, talked about the great philanthropists of America, the ones that give away tens of millions of dollars a year. Not one of them gives 1% of their annual income to philanthropy. Not one. I mean, you know, think, oh, you know, Bill Gates, he gives, you know, he makes $8 million a day. Whatever he gives is chump change. So think about that. You know?
We're sitting in the headquarters of a company that's doing even better than that.
Well, that's good.
We know where to send the application. When you have meetings with your management, and a lot of them are younger than the two of us, obviously, and I know from my own personal experience that they share your ethos in terms of what they're passionate about. When you call the Patagonia switchboard, the operator is likely to say, hey, dude, the surf is up when you're getting out here. But do you have real conflict with them about the future of Patagonia and technology and the uses of technology for marketing and retailing?
No, I don't put my own values as far as being wired onto the people that work for me. I mean, you have to compete, and you have to compete with the latest technology.
And what about other conflicts outside the area of technology in terms of materials and?
Well, yeah. Let me give you an example. We were really getting, you know, this technical underwear is a big part of our business, and we were getting a lot of competition from Under Armour and all these other companies doing virtually the same thing, and they were putting silver into the product to kill bacteria so that your underwear didn't smell as much when you're on an expedition for 70 days and you don't get to change your underwear. Well, we refuse to put silver in it because it's a toxic heavy metal, and so our underwear sales are really starting to go down. But you know, if you do the right thing, it always works out. Well, this Japanese guy that works for me in our fabric lab, his father, who lives in Japan as a scientist, came up with he takes crab shells, crushes them, and makes a formula, and we dip our underwear in that, and it lasts you 50 washings, and it completely eliminates odor. Completely natural.
And your underwear goes very nice with a cold beer then, too.
Well, you know, when you're wearing your underwear for 60 or 70 days, it's time to change. So, so then you say, okay, George, you changed with Phil. Phil, you.
I guess the one long-running disagreement that we've had in all the years that we've been great friends is whether the glass is half empty or half full about the future of this country. And you have two kids, Fletcher and Claire. Fletcher is shaping surfboards and involved in the company, and Claire is a design genius as well. Do you think they'll have the lives that you and Melinda have had?
Yeah, I think they will. Although I'm not very optimistic about the future. I mean, this dichotomy between increasing consumerism and you know, we could have a world event tomorrow where the entire world economy crashes, completely crashes. I mean, the 9/11 thing was a little tiny incident of what could happen, and then what? You know, you've got a world where basically there's no more environmentalists because it's survival. It's kind of like national parks in Africa where people are shooting and eating and endangered species because they got to feed their family. And it could be a world like that. It could start tomorrow. So I'm glad I'm getting near the end of mine because I'm not too optimistic about the future.
I'm going to close with one of many anecdotes that I could share with you. We were at top Mount Rainier, and it was my first ice climb. I had a 30-second lesson in crampon use from Yvon and self-arrest at the base of the mountain before we got up there. It took us a couple of days to get up, and we got up, and there was a Rhine ice storm at the top, and couldn't find our way off and couldn't see each other. And I'm thinking, what the hell am I doing up here? When all of a sudden, materializing out of this cold, driven mist is Yvon. He gets right up on my face with a big Cheshire grin on his face, and he said, "Isn't this great?" And it's been great having you here today, Yvon, as well. Thank you very much.